The wind howls across the Ural Mountains, a bitter gust that cuts through the trees like the cold fingers of death itself. Silence stretches over the snowy peaks, broken only by the crunch of snow underfoot and the eerie, distant calls of the wild. But beneath this stillness, something else stirs, something ancient, something that will never let go. A secret buried deep in the snow, whispered in the shadows. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass. It was February of 1959, when 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embarked on an expedition into the treacherous Ural Mountains. Their goal, to reach the peak of Otorten, a task that had been attempted before, but never quite achieved. These were no ordinary travelers. They were seasoned hikers, accustomed to the harshest elements of nature. They had planned everything carefully, but they never returned. The first signs of something going wrong came when the hikers failed to send their telegram upon their return. Days passed. Their families grew frantic, but it wasn't until February 26th that a search party was dispatched. What they would find would haunt the world forever. When they found the hikers' abandoned tent at Dyatlov Pass, it was torn open from the inside, as if something or someone had been desperate to escape. The shredded fabric lay in tatters, and the snow surrounding it was disturbed, footprints leading away in a panicked flight. But here's where the mystery thickens. None of the hikers' belongings had been taken. Their shoes were left behind, their gear, their supplies, everything but the one thing they needed most: their lives. The searchers followed the footprints for over a mile through the snow, deeper into the mountains. And then they found them. Those who had managed to flee the tent, who had somehow escaped. But their escape hadn't been a rescue from danger. It had been a frantic, unexplainable dash towards something worse. The first body was found by a tree, half-dressed, with severe frostbite. The others lay scattered in the snow, their bodies frozen, each more gruesome than the last. One of them was missing an eye. Another had a gaping wound in their skull, their internal injuries so severe it was as though they had been hit by a heavy force. But the most disturbing detail came with the discovery of the female hiker. Her tongue was missing, and her eyes were gone. And yet, there were no signs of struggle, no signs of violence beyond what had been inflicted post-mortem. What could have done this? Theories began to swirl. Some said they had fallen victim to an avalanche. But when the experts examined the scene, no signs of avalanche debris were found. Others suggested an animal attack, but the bodies showed no marks consistent with such a thing. The most chilling theory, one that has never been fully disproven, is that something human or not human had driven them to madness. Something that made them flee their tent in the middle of the night. Something that took their lives one by one, with no mercy. But the mysteries don't stop there. Eyewitnesses who lived nearby claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky around the time of the hikers' deaths, glowing orbs that hovered over the mountains. Some said they heard unusual sounds, like thunder, even when the sky was clear. Could these lights have something to do with the deaths? Were the hikers' final moments marked by some kind of supernatural force, something that still lingers in the area to this day? As the years went by, the mystery deepened. Government files surrounding the incident were sealed. Theories ranged from secret military experiments to alien encounters to curses that stretched back through the ages. What happened on that mountain, what drove those 9 hikers to their violent deaths, remains unsolved. But one thing is clear: the Dyatlov Pass is no ordinary place. Today, the location remains a place of legend, a place where strange things are still said to happen. Those who venture too close to the area often report a sense of unease, a feeling of being watched, followed by an oppressive cold that seems to creep into the bones. Some even claim to have heard the sound of footsteps in the snow behind them when no one else is there. And every so often, hikers who tread near the pass report inexplicable disturbances, lights in the distance, whispers carried on the wind, and the haunting sense that they are not alone. The spirits of the Dyatlov Pass victims are said to haunt the mountain, their restless souls trapped in the snow. Their tragic, violent deaths echo in the shadows, leaving behind more questions than answers. Some say their spirits can never move on until the truth is uncovered, but perhaps some truths are never meant to be known. So, what happened at Dyatlov Pass? Was it a cruel twist of nature? A horrifying encounter with something unnatural? Or is there a darker force at play, one that still waits for its next victim? As the snow continues to fall and the mountains stand silent, we may never know. But the shadows of Dyatlov Pass will always be there, waiting, watching, lingering. And it is in those shadows that the truth may finally be found, or lost forever. It was 2013, and Los Angeles was still buzzing with life, as it always is, under the bright lights and endless motion. But in the shadow of the city, on Main Street, there stood a building that seemed to pulse with darkness, a building that had seen things no one should ever witness. The Cecil Hotel. It's an old place built in 1927, with a history drenched in violence, death, and secrets that have never been fully uncovered. Some say the hotel itself is cursed, haunted by the spirits of the lost souls who met their untimely ends within its walls. Murders, suicides, even the infamous serial killer Richard Ramirez stayed there. It's no wonder the air around the Cecil feels thick, oppressive, like something is always lurking just out of sight. But it wasn't until 2013 that the world began to truly understand just how sinister the Cecil Hotel could be. Her name was Elisa Lam. A 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Elisa had traveled to Los Angeles in hopes of exploring the city, but instead, she became part of something far darker. On January 31st, Elisa checked into the Cecil. She was just like any other traveler, except for one thing. From the moment she arrived, something wasn't right. There were whispers about her, strange encounters with hotel staff, even reports of odd behavior. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what would happen next. Elisa Lam was last seen on the hotel's security footage, stepping into an elevator, a small, cramped elevator, where something inexplicable happened. The footage is chilling. It shows Elisa entering the elevator, pressing a series of buttons, but something is off. The doors don't close. She steps out, peeks around the corner, and then she disappears. You can feel the tension building in the air, can't you? There's something unsettling in her movements, something desperate. It's as though she's being drawn into something, pulled by an unseen force. She presses the buttons again, pacing back and forth in the elevator. The doors still won't close. And then She steps back into the hallway, looking over her shoulder, as though someone or something is watching her. That's when the footage cuts off. It's as if the elevator was trying to trap her, to keep her inside, but she resisted. Or maybe something resisted her. And after that, Elisa vanished without a trace. Days passed, and the hotel guests complained about low water pressure and strange tastes in the water. No one thought much of it until a maintenance worker was sent to investigate. What he found in the hotel's rooftop water tank left everyone horrified. Elisa Lam's body was discovered floating inside, her clothes in disarray, her face eerily still. She had been dead for weeks. Weeks. No one knew how she ended up there. No one knew how she got onto the roof, or why she would have gone there. The hotel doors were locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. It was as though Elisa had disappeared into thin air and reappeared in the most unlikely place. But that's not the scariest part. The elevator footage, the footage that no one can explain, has become an internet sensation. Thousands have poured over it, trying to piece together the strange events leading up to her death. Some say Elisa's movements are the result of mental illness, while others believe something far darker was at play. There are theories of possession, of spiritual entities, of the hotel itself feeding off the negative energy that has plagued it for years. Could Elisa's own mind have been taken over by something? Or was the hotel's dark history finally catching up to her? The more you think about it, the more questions arise. How could she have gotten to the roof? Why was the elevator malfunctioning in such a strange way? Was she running from something? Or was something running after her? And then, there's the hotel's history. The Cecil has seen death in so many forms. Suicides, murders, untold horrors. Can a place like that leave a mark? Can the very walls of a building trap the souls of the dead? Elisa Lam's death is just one piece of the puzzle. Some believe the hotel's dark past fed on her, just as it has with others before her. There are stories of strange encounters, paranormal activity, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Guests have reported hearing ghostly whispers in the halls, sightings of figures lurking in the shadows, and the feeling of a cold presence that never leaves. But Elisa's case, Elisa's story, it's different. It's not just about a young woman who met an unfortunate end in a strange and unexplained way. It's about a place that seems to call to the lost, the broken, and the vulnerable, pulling them into its depths and swallowing them whole. And even now, those who dare to visit the Cecil Hotel report strange occurrences, flickering lights, sudden drops in temperature, and the feeling that the hotel is alive. So the next time you hear someone mention the Cecil Hotel, remember this. Some places, some stories, they're meant to remain mysteries. Because once you step into the shadows of a place like that, who knows what you might bring back with you? Who knows what might follow you home? Have you ever felt a chill that runs deeper than the cold? A bone-deep freeze that settles into your very soul? I felt that the night I lost my Zona. She was only 23, so full of life. She had married Edward, a man she thought would love her, and I, foolishly, thought he was kind. But something about him, there was something dark behind his eyes. Maybe I didn't want to see it, but I felt it, like a shadow creeping at the edges of my thoughts. He was a quiet man, almost too quiet, always watching, always waiting. Zona was so happy, so young, but there was a hollow look in her eyes after they married, a sadness I couldn't explain. She'd tell me nothing. I kept quiet though, fearing I was imagining things. Until the night everything changed. It was a cold evening in January, the kind of night that presses down on you like a weight, making the air heavy, thick with secrets. The winds howled through the trees like they knew something, like they were whispering about what had happened in that house. Zona didn't come home. I thought maybe she was out with her husband, but then came the knock. I still hear it. That soft, hesitant knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood a neighbor, face pale, eyes wide. "Zona's dead," he said, almost too calmly. My heart stopped. I asked how could she be gone? I had just spoken to her the day before. The neighbor said it was a heart condition, some kind of sudden illness, and they'd buried her quickly. Something inside me snapped. A heart condition? Number, I didn't believe it. Zona was too young, too strong. She couldn't have died like that. Not after everything. I could feel it, a dark knot forming deep in my stomach, like a shadow taking shape, inching closer. Something was wrong, and then that night came. I can't explain it. I can't. I was alone in my room, staring out at the moonlit hills, my mind spinning with the horror of it all, when I heard it. A soft rustling, like a whisper on the wind. At first I thought I was imagining things, but no. There it was again, more distinct this time. "Mama!" I froze. The air grew colder, sharper, like something was creeping closer, suffocating the room. It couldn't be her. It just couldn't. But I knew. I knew deep in my bones. It was Zona. Her voice. I could feel her presence like she was standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. But when I turned, nothing. The room was empty, but she wasn't gone. "Mama, I didn't die from no sickness. I was murdered." I gasped, my heart pounding against my chest as though it wanted to escape. Her voice was faint, like a distant echo, but it cut through me like a knife. She was here. And then came the truth, Edward. Her husband, the man I thought she loved. He had taken her life. Slowly, carefully, like a predator stalking its prey. The scarf she had worn that morning, he had wrapped it around her throat, strangling her until the light left her eyes. And there, in the silence of that cold room, I felt it. A rush of icy terror, as if the very walls were closing in on me, pressing in with a force that made it hard to breathe. Zona's spirit showed me it all. Her final moments, her desperate struggle, the coldness in his eyes as he took her life. I could hear the scuffle, the tightness of the scarf pulling against her throat, the muffled cries. I could feel her terror, her breath choking off, her hands reaching out for something, anything to save her. But there was nothing. Nothing but Edward standing over her, a dark figure in the dim light. And when it was done, when she was gone, he just stood there, like it was nothing. Nothing. The room spun around me as I fought to stay grounded in reality. Zona's spirit pulled me back from the edge, her voice urging me to do something, to bring him to justice. And so, in the dead of night, trembling with fear, I did what I had to do. I went to the authorities, my voice shaking, barely able to speak. They thought I had lost my mind. A ghost. They mocked me, said I was grieving, that I was imagining things. But I wouldn't be silenced. Zona wouldn't be silenced. I begged them, pleaded with them. And finally, they agreed to reopen the case. They exhumed her body, and that's when the truth came to light. Her neck had been broken, the signs of strangulation unmistakable. The doctors had missed it the first time, but Zona's spirit had shown me, had forced me to act. Her husband was arrested, and he was convicted of her murder. Justice had been served, but at what cost? And now, sometimes, I still feel her presence. It's subtle, like a shadow in the corner of my eye, a cold breeze in the dead of night. I hear her whispers, soft but clear, reminding me of what happened, of what she endured. I know now that she will never truly leave me. Her justice, her vengeance, it lives on. Zona is still here, and her ghost won't ever rest until the world knows the truth.